Okay, so I think everyone knows me. Does anyone not know me? I'm Matt. I've got about 2,200 jumps. Most of them are 4-way, 8-way skydiving, some big-way skydiving, and I'm going to be talking to you about break-off safety. The aim of this talk is to remind everyone about the basic principles of safety on break-off, and also to explore some more complex scenarios you might find yourself in on break-off and how we can be safe there as well. It's probably calibrated for people that have got FS1 plus a bunch of jumps afterwards, but just so I understand, has everyone in here got an A license? Is there anyone that doesn't have an A license in the room? Anyone not got FS1? Okay. It's got a C license. Stick your hands up if you've got a C license. And D license. Okay. So first of all, why do we break off? So for the people that don't have FS1 yet, do you guys know what break off is and why we break off? Yeah? And someone else come in? Alright, I'll let you know. Yeah, so we break off so that we can have safe space around us so that we can open our parachutes. I've got a couple of videos to show you. So the first one, you don't need to read all the writing, it's just Friday freak out description. But basically, the plan on this jump was there was going to be a cameraman in the middle, he was going to pull in place. The other three were going to track, and they perhaps don't track quite far enough. So you see, probably quite a low experienced group. Cameraman has a fair few jumps, but doesn't pull straight away. And then with a short track, you can see how quite quickly you could end up with things going wrong. So there it is. I've got another video, for some reason it won't let me play it. There's another one here from a Scrambles 4-way event at another drop zone in great weather. Someone goes a little bit low, perhaps gets a bit confused, not quite sure what's going on at break off, maybe thinks he's got some space that he doesn't. I'll just let this one play. Yeah, it's almost like they planned to do something for nothing. Leave them that little space. I'll let this one play in slow motion as well. You can see the guys down here. It doesn't really look like he's tracked away from the formation, perhaps a bit lost, a bit confused. Can't see anyone around, thanks. I'll just open my parachute now. Luckily these three decide to let go, because if you look at where they are now and where the guy's about to appear, there's really not a lot of space. So yeah, so we break off because we need safe space to open our parachutes. That first one, by the way, nobody was hurt. Other canopy maybe got a bit damaged. But yeah, you can see how quite quickly that could end up being a much more serious situation and people could get overkill. Okay, so break off. How do we come up with our plan for break off? We need to have a height that we're going to break off by. So for who in the room has an A license? Just an A license.
Only an A license.
Only an A license, not a B license. Do you guys know what height you have to have your main parachute open for? 3,000 feet. So you need to be open by 3,000 feet. And that's worth everyone else remembering as well. If you're jumping with someone with an A license, you might have 1,000 jumps, but with their A license, they have to have their parachute open, and it's a minimum of 3,000 feet. Have to think about how long we want to track for. So if we're doing a 4-way, maybe we want to track a good 5 or 6 seconds. So to have your parachute open for 3,000 feet, you probably want to start the deployment at 4,000 feet. If you're falling 1,000 feet every 5 or 6 seconds, then we're probably looking at about 5,000 feet at the lowest to be starting that break off to still be open by 3,000 feet. And you also want a little bit of contingency for that time where you miss the handle the first time or whatever. So one for the more experienced jumpers to remember, when you've got the A license people jumping with you, break off of 4,500 feet that we'd normally go for might actually be a little bit low. So experience level, think about who's on the jump with you. Depending on the discipline you're doing, so I'm mostly going to talk about breaking off from formation skydives, belly skydives. If you're going for a tracking jump, you're going to be deliberately moving across the sky and probably taking yourselves to somewhere that's not the exact spot. So Ash will tell you in all the detail you want as a tracking coach about tracking break-offs, but if you're going to be deliberately moving yourself to somewhere that's not the ideal spot to open, you probably want to break off a little bit higher. And then you've also got all the other considerations we've just talked about. So do you need to always track at the end of a jump? Probably yes. We'll talk about pulling in place, but vertical separation, I would guess, and I don't know, that the guy in the second video probably had a good look around and thought there was nobody near him, and thought, I'm just going to pull. He maybe thought, I've got vertical separation. I've known of jumpers who've got FS1 and they've been used to having their coach with them for the whole jump, and then you suddenly go on a jump, you're nowhere near anybody at break-off time, and you think, oh, I've got loads of space, and just deploy. But you can see how quickly vertical separation disappears. Even if you're the one that's higher, you might think, I'm just going to pull from above them. If you have a malfunction or slow opening, you can lose that vertical separation really, really quickly. So when we pull in place, as demonstrated here by Paul Remington, nice pull in place, you want to pull immediately on break-off, and you need to kind of know that the others that are tracking away are going to create enough horizontal separation that if you have a malfunction in the middle, that you're not going to be back in amongst it again. And vertical separation does help, but we don't want to rely on it as our only separation here. If you're filming an inexperienced group, then it might be worth just tracking yourself as well, because you don't want to end up like in the first video, where a short track means that really you're straight back on top of each other. Group size, has everyone done at least a two-way before? Okay. So you end up with about half the sky each, 180 degrees separation. On a four-way, you're going to have 90 degrees each. As you get up to eight-way, you're getting less and less of the sky to track in. So you need to have a good plan for break-off. You've got your break-off height agreed, but just have a think. Have a think about where you want to be, how long you need to be tracking for. With the bigger group, we tend to raise the break-off height. So while 4.5 or 5,000 feet might be okay for a four-way, if you're going to be doing an eight-way, maybe 5,000 feet, and as we get up to the bigger groups, we raise that break-off height so you're tracking for longer. If you imagine if you had a 100-way or 400-way, let's say a 360-way, you'd have 1 degree of sky each, and then either you're going to have to track for a really long time, or we can start to look at things like tracking groups. The idea of tracking groups is that you take a chunk of people away in the same direction and then fan them out over there, and then the same this way, rather than everyone having to pick a really specific heading. This is similar to break off on a tracking jump, where you're going to break off in one direction, you're already all flying in one direction, and you can fan out. But on a tracking jump, you definitely don't want to go more than 90 degrees and back the way you just came. And similarly, if you're in a tracking group on a big way jump, you don't want to be fanning out so much that you're then heading towards the next tracking group. Tracking waves is where, say you've got a huge formation, you can get rid of all the people on the outside, leave a group in the middle. The outside people can maybe track from 7,000 or 8,000 feet, and then the inside wave's going to go at your more normal 4.5, 5,000 feet. If you're in the middle group, don't try and catch up the outside group. So in that case, you maybe don't want to do your very best, fastest track. You just want to get separation from the people near you, make sure you're not catching up. On the outside wave, you make sure that you're doing your very best track and getting as far as possible, because you know that the inside group's going to be coming after you. Nice example here, so we've got both tracking groups and waves here. So you can see these guys here all heading off together in a nice little formation, and we've got the remaining four who are in the base staying to do a couple more points because they've got another 1,000 or 2,000 feet. That size of tracking group is a bit overkill for this formation, but this was a Sequential Games warm-up jump, so these guys were practicing their tracking group because they were about to go on to 150-ish ways. So there's another tracking group just like that going off in all four directions, and these guys staying in the middle on this jump. Know who you're close to opening. So even if you plan all of that really well, if you do lots of big jumps, formation, skydives, at some point you're going to end up fairly close to someone when you deploy. The best thing to do is to know where that person is. So if you've tracked away from an 8-way, for example, and you know that your teammate or whoever it is fairly close to you on your left, just be aware of that. You don't want to keep tracking all the way down to 2,000 feet just to get a little bit more separation, but just deploy your parachute, and once your parachute's opened, get ready to take control of it and steer to what you know is a good open space. And if in the unlikely event you both have off-heading openings straight towards each other, you're then ready to deal with it. Does that make sense? Okay, so after opening, once we've deployed our parachutes, it's a good idea to keep flying the parachute the same way that you were just tracking. So if you saw the first video where the guy tracks a very short distance, has an off heading, comes straight back again, it's the same thing on a slightly bigger scale. If Nino and I have just done a jump together, he's tracked that way and I've gone this way, if we both then just turn around and start flying our parachute straight back towards each other, say closing speed of about 40 miles an hour, it's not going to take very long until we're straight back on top of each other again. So, in you come, Judd. So while you're sorting out your slider and faffing around with all that sort of thing, make sure that you're still flying in a sensible direction and you're not just heading straight back towards somebody that you were on the jump with. And generally, a good way to do that is to fly the parachute the way you've just been tracking. As that says there. So also look for the next group. If we've got lots of groups getting out of the plane, don't just keep flying the way you were tracking if that's taking you straight up the jump run. Have a look around and be aware of where that next group is opening and kind of clock where those parachutes have opened, and then you can start to think about what you're going to do next. This is particularly important. I don't know if any of you were here jumping yesterday, but we had kind of running across the whole airfield with the first group getting out quite short, next group in the middle, and then the next group getting out just past. If you find you've opened short, if you then start heading straight towards your holding area, you're actually flying your parachute straight up the jump run towards the next group. So always be aware of that if you know it's a bit of a short spot, and make sure you find the next group before you start flying your parachute. So tracking skills, so we've got Will Cook here. Nice big long legs and arms help, but also really good body position. So this isn't an FS coaching talk, so I'm not going to go into the details of how to do a good flat track, but I want to make the point that you should always be working on it and keep trying to improve your track. It's easy to get lazy if you're doing mostly, say, four-way jumps, that you just get a little bit of separation and that's fine and deploy, but keep using it as an opportunity to develop your tracking skills, track your hardest on every jump, and keep getting better at tracking. Get coaching as well, so there's loads of FS coaches here. If you want to do coach jumps, we're always happy to do them with you, even if you've already got your FS1. And ask your load organisers to watch you track, watch you fly away from the formation, and we can debrief you and help you work on your skills. And then track like your life depends on it, because one day it might. So this is a picture of a 130ish way that I was on in Paris, 2019. This is what it was supposed to look like. On one of the jumps before, it turned into this. So basically the whole middle of the formation collapsed, and we went from having our nice planned groups, waves, to 130 people just picked a direction and went for it. I wish I'd been this guy. He saw what was coming. The way I was looking, I didn't even realise it had funneled, and was in like, why are there people? Oh, we're going now. And then everyone just was off in all sorts of directions. So ideally, you would stick to your plan, but sometimes you will be tracking along. And as I was tracking away from this, I was tracking, going round people, going round open canopies, which was fun. I believe what happened is the guys that were in the base got a bit muddled. They're used to hearing one beep to start tracking and another beep to pull. So they left when this happened, and then when they heard their beeps at 5,500 feet to start tracking, all started throwing pilot chutes. Which means that the big tends to be the heavier base guys who have tracked down here are then all throwing parachutes up and amongst the floaty people who are all then having to carve around. So that's another point. If we're breaking off, you don't want to throw your pilot. You don't want to throw your pilot chute early, because if you throw it early, you're going to be open high, and other people are still going to be tracking towards you. So you always want to pull at the correct height. Even if you think you've got enough separation, don't start deploying high. Broken.
In the right way, the batteries.
Yeah, there we go. Okay. Everyone happy with that concept? Track like your life depends on it, because one day you might end up having to do a lot of very hard, fast tracking to get yourself out of a bit of a sketchy situation. And we brought this funneled at like 9,000 feet. I had time while tracking. It's like, your life really does depend on it. You're determined. So a little bit about cloud. Obviously never on purpose. We never jump in cloud at all. But occasionally you might have some patches of cloud. You find yourself heading towards a cloud. It could be on the plane ride up that you realise there's some patches of cloud around 5,000 feet. could be a sensible decision to raise your break-off height. So if you're breaking off at 6, then everyone's at least headed off in a direction and you've clocked where everybody's going before you get into the cloud, rather than everybody disappearing into the cloud and then scattering. But ideally, you want to be checking the weather is appropriate for the size of the skydive you're doing. Certainly once you're onto the big formations, you don't want to be having hundreds of people tracking around in the clouds. Going low. So a little bit about going low. Occasionally someone will end up underneath a formation. If you do, please don't leave early. Now in this case, this talented skydiver got himself straight back up and into the formation. But sometimes you will go low and end up just stuck there. What some people think is, I'm never going to get back, I'm just going to head off now. But then a bit like we said with on that 100 way with people throwing pilot chutes early, people tend to track off and pull high, it's not great, but also nobody knows where you've gone. So if we're in a formation over here, let's say Mac's gone low, and he's decided I'm not getting back and just heads off that way at 6,000-7,000 feet. We'll finish the skydive, I'll turn around and track this way, not expecting to find Mac 1,000 feet below and somewhere over there. Whereas if Mac waits and keeps trying to get back up to it until the agreed break-off height, as I turn, I'm like, oh look, there's Mac down there, I better give him some space. And really, it's the people above that should be checking below, because it's very hard once you're down there to do much about it, other than don't leave early and then it's at risk. And watch out for it as well. If you're one of the more experienced skydivers on the group, remember to look where you're going. So I've had it before on, it was I think a 20-something way, maybe bigger. Somebody had gone low and left a little bit early, so I turned, tracked off this way, not realising that someone had gone low over there, and then tracked off a bit round in a corner. I'm tracking along, I can see everybody that I'm tracking a little bit faster than, because the group wasn't that experienced, and forgot to check in front of me and look for anybody that might be there, because I figured no one's gone faster than me, I've got a great track right now, I can see everybody, yeah, this is great. And then the canopy appeared straight in front of me. Jodie Lee was on the jump, she was tracking along beside me and watched me and the other person end up like this as he curved under. We both stopped in a nice vertical stack and went like this, and she just watched it and went, oh, that doesn't look good. And I kept watching it. Oh, it's okay, they've missed each other. Oh shit, I need to pull. And that genuinely, I've caught myself doing that as well, that if you see stuff going on that's a bit weird, remember your own break-off as well. You can't help at that point, so just do your own thing. Make sure that you're safe and you're pulling as well. It's easy, surprisingly easy to get distracted at the time. Yeah, and look for anyone that's missing. So had I been more aware on that jump, I might have noticed that we're meant to be doing a 28 way and there's only 27 people there. But obviously as it gets bigger, it's harder to notice when people are missing. Okay, so my aim here was just to go over some basics of safety for break-off, chat about some of the more interesting scenarios that you might find yourself in. Hopefully I have achieved that. So have you got any questions at all about anything?